So this is for Ghazala, Miss Ghazala. Let's start the interview. Please tell me about your experiences as an English teacher in this school. How long have you been a teacher of English?
Alright, so I've been teaching for about 8 years. I first started when I was in university and I took it up as a part-time job. Then I really started to enjoy it, so I went on to teach and I have taught in a kindergarten, which was very fun. Now, this year it has been a big change because I'm teaching P5 and 6. They're a lot older than the age group that I was teaching last year. And I find my teaching experience in this school, it has been good. I find that kids here need a lot of motivation to learn. You have to motivate them a lot, and that affects how they learn. So I think we have to concentrate on building their soft skills, not just giving them knowledge and information.
So do you think that students at this school are less motivated compared to like the other students about the same age?
I believe the majority, there are some classes where students are really well motivated, but for example, the A classes, the students have good learning habits, so they learn a lot more effectively. But if I move on to, let's say, B, C, D, I can really see that they do not have the right learning habits to attain information. They can do their exercises fine and all of that is good, but you can see the knowledge doesn't sink in, They might answer things on an exam, but you have to be able to apply it too. So I think experiential learning is missing. It's very test based.
Okay. How long have you been working in this school?
I've been this is my first year, so only a few months.
Right.
Since October, so
for 5 months.
Yeah, 5 months, about 5 months now.
How do you plan for lessons?
I have co-planning meetings with my other English teachers, and I can see teachers in this school are really good. They're passionate and they understand the curriculum quite well. So I have meetings with them and I find things that the students should concentrate on, and then I think of ways to make it a bit more fun for them to learn, because it's language, so I want them to be moving about and using it instead of sitting down and doing something. So I try to include an activity-based lesson at least once a month, and in the class too we have a lot of things where they get to speak more. And I find that sometimes students, as they grow up, when they become, let's say, P5 and P6, they start to feel reluctant about making mistakes. But when they're younger, they don't care about making mistakes. They're just, happy to pick it up. If they make a mistake, they brush it off. So that's one challenge of teaching older kids. You have to get them to get over the fear of making mistakes, because that is how they learn. Yeah.
Actually, what classes do you teach?
I teach P5 and P6. Yes, but to answer your question about how I plan my lessons, so I look at my books, the curriculum. I have meetings with my teachers, and I do a lot of research online to find the internet is great because there are so many wonderful tips and so many great game ideas. So I do use a lot of that and try to include that in my lesson.
So you teach 5 ABCD and 6 ABC?
That's right.
Okay. Do you know anything about the tutoring received by the students in the classes?
I do know one of my, in 5D, for example, one of the girls, she gets private tutoring, or she actually, not private, but I think she goes out to extra lessons.
Tutoring
Probably,
centers.
yes, I think so. And when I compare her to the rest of the class, you can see she's much better at the subject. So I do think if you find a good teacher anywhere, it always helps. Sometimes tutorial centers are very focused on a certain thing, so maybe kids can benefit in that way.
Actually, you can see the number that these are the ones who do not go to tutoring. So
Okay.
actually, you can see lots of them go to tutoring.
Yeah,
Like
that
private
is
tutoring
true.
or tutoring centers.
Oh,
So
that
are you surprised at the
I'm
number?
really surprised, yeah. Because I thought very few would go to private tutoring. Oh, okay. But sometimes I think kids, they also need time to learn on their own. Free learning that has to be outside of classroom, outside of tutorial centers. We have to let them develop curiosity. But with in this age, because everything is about instant gratification, for example, I don't know something, I'm not going to think about it and figure it out. I'm just going to go online and look for an answer. So that sort of it's a blessing and a curse, you know. It's a double-edged sword. So that probably, maybe going out and doing activities will help our kids a lot more than tutorial centers.
Okay, so why do you think students go to tutoring centers
I really
or
I-
private tutors?
Yeah, I think that there's a big pressure for students to do well in exams. So in order to get exam skills, they go to tutorial centers to learn to get better at any subject that they choose, so their exam results would be better.
Any other reasons?
Mm, well, I think that's the biggest reason, and parents probably push kids to go to tutorial centers. I'm sure kids are not so excited to go there.
And also because the students in our school, they're from like poor family background. Do you think it also affects why they go to tutoring centers or have tutoring?
Actually, I don't think so, because I think even kids from different financial, economical backgrounds, I think it's a cultural thing. Hong Kong is very driven by exams, so in order to do well in exams, parents from everywhere, they just want their kids to have a better future, so they send them to these tutorial centers. I noticed this with different levels of students. But I have noticed, and sometimes when I talk to some of my students who are coming from a fairly better financial situation, their parents understand that they need to have other activities, they need to have free time for them to have that break where their brains can refresh and learn much better. So I think yeah, everyone goes to tutorial centers here, but I think doing better in exams or being smart has nothing to do with studying like a million hours a day. I think it has a lot to do with good learning habits, knowing how to learn. And nobody teaches children that. Everybody just tells them, study hard. But what is study hard? Yeah.
Sorry, may I pause? So there are different types of tutoring. For example, students have private tutors or they go to tutoring centers, and there are also different types of tutoring centers. So what do you think of these different types of tutoring?
Okay, I think going to tutorial centers could be good, because there's a big class. You can sort of learn from other students too. One-on-one, it can be a lot more effective because it's catered to that kid, but if you do it for so long, it can get a bit boring. So in a class, it's a bit more dynamic. good learning centers would provide that. But then I also see a lot of learning centers, sometimes they're just so targeted towards just giving students extra exercises. There's not much teaching. So if parents want to choose a good learning center, it's important to take the time to observe at least one class so they know what their kids are getting into. I had a friend who was working at a tutorial center, and I went to visit her once, and it was a complete mess. Nobody was really thinking about what the students' needs are. They were just giving everyone extra exercises just to kill that time. It's so ineffective and unfair to the student and the parent, because they're paying good money. They should get good results. So one-on-one can be a lot more effective, but then there's this need to always fill that 1 hour. I think when you're doing a one-on-one tutoring, it should be a bit shorter, because it's very intense.
Yeah. So how effective and helpful do you think tutoring is?
That really depends on the tutor. But how would you make it effective? I think when you have a good tutor, it can be quite effective, but you have to have breaks in between. It shouldn't have to be an everyday thing. And if possible, for me, an ideal day in a child's life would be to have good lessons at school, have engaging lessons at school, and then simply no need for tutoring, because kids need to be kids.
But how about the three levels of students, like the students with better abilities, the middle ones, and the poor ones?
Okay, I think kids with better abilities, sometimes they have this urge to learn a lot of things, and I think a tutor can be a great stepping stone by providing them that new knowledge that the school may not be able to give, because the school has to cater to all levels. So they have to sometimes have material that that's good for everyone, but a tutor is not tied down like that. So a tutor can give a very smart student difficult stuff that he or she might find engaging. So kids with better abilities might benefit in that way. I think mid or lower, especially lower abilities, I think instead of drilling them with different tutors and just forcing them to keep on doing things, we have to go to the root of the problem and teach them better learning habits, and then they can go on to tutors. But if we don't do that, it's just ineffective. It's a waste of time.
So are you saying that all kinds of students with all different types of abilities should go to tutoring, should have tutoring?
No, I'm not saying that. I think students with better abilities can benefit from tutoring a lot more than students with lower abilities, because students with lower abilities clearly struggle with learning and keeping up with the material. It's counterintuitive to just give more stuff to them without understanding why they can't keep up. So I think lower ability students will not benefit from tutoring. They will definitely benefit from exposing themselves to different things on their own, because they need to nurture that curiosity that's important for learning. Yeah.
So can you describe your feelings towards tutoring?
My feelings towards tutoring, I think, like I said, tutoring can be a good thing if you have a good tutor, and if you are really if you really want to learn a lot. But in general, I would say one kids, this is not a necessary thing to a kid's education. If I have kids, I don't think I would send them to tutoring lessons. So I do not think it is extremely important or plays. It might play a great role in exam results, but it doesn't add much value, I would say, to life skills.
But the thing for the students in our school is that because they're from a poor family background and the parents are very busy, so sometimes the parents can't teach their children. So do you think at this, like for this circumstance, it's necessary for the students to go to tutoring, to have tutoring?
That's a good point. I think if the parents do not have time to help them with their homework, I think a short tutoring session is important, like a homework oriented tutoring. But again, I don't think it should be so long where they lost all their after school they lose all their after school time. Yeah.
Okay. So can you compare the students with and without tutoring?
Well, just now you showed me that chart and I'm quite surprised. So clearly I don't know the difference between kids who go to tutoring, kids who do not go tutoring. So I can't tell you what their advantages or disadvantages would be.
But you talked about the girl.
Yeah, that girl, she's really, really good at this subject, but I can also see she's really interested in the language. So she's intrinsically so motivated to learn. Yeah, so I don't know if it is having tutoring lessons or her own attitude towards the subject. So I don't see such a big difference, to be honest.
So can you describe the advantages and disadvantages of tutoring? Or you don't see any?
The advantages of tutoring, like you said, it's good for children who need help, extra help with their homework, and their parents are not able to give them that help. That's one advantage. Another very apparent advantage is doing well in exams. Disadvantage is that someone is giving you. Disadvantage is, kids are always in a very systemized learning situation, so they don't get to learn independently. They're not nurturing a lifelong learning habit. They're just learning in a classroom. And it eats up so much of time, kids can't really be kids anymore.
So do you think tutoring has any influence on your class discipline? For example, students who go to tutoring centers may have bad behaviors, they don't pay attention, or the ones who do not go to tutoring centers may better participate or something like that.
Not at all. I don't think it affects the discipline in any way, at least for my classes. So yeah, I don't think it affects the discipline.
Okay, so do you support tutoring? You said no, right?
No, I don't think I support tutoring because it just eats up so much of the kids' time. It's unfair.
Okay. Have parents ever consulted you about private tutoring?
Yes, for sure. Sometimes a child needs extra help and I will give advice to the parents, and if for a certain amount of time to help a kid develop a skill, it can be a great thing. But if it's an ongoing thing, if it's an ongoing thing and it takes up so much of the child's time, then I would not recommend it.
So have you ever on your own initiative advised parents to seek tutoring?
No, I have never done that. I don't support it so much.
So how does tutoring affect you as an English teacher?
As an English teacher, I'm always asked to give extra lessons, and because it's really good money, I have done it in the past. But I think I think if you have good teachers in school, that is a lot more effective than having to go to tutorial centers or tutoring, unless, as I said, the child is extremely smart and the tutor is really good and understands their learning habits. So if someone is not doing really well in school and you can get a tutor who will develop their learning habits, I think that is a great advantage. But a teacher's job is to teach their student so they can become independent, right? They can use these skills without us. But a tutor's job is different. Tutorial centers want kids to come back again and again, so it doesn't really go in that direction. It's always, oh, I'll give you a shortcut to this is this, but it's not, what do you think? Well, how would you apply it?
Do you mind if we just...
How does tutoring affect me as an English teacher? If kids know their stuff well, and if they are up to date, then it makes my lesson a lot more better. It makes it better because I can teach them a lot more difficult stuff and help them go over what they're required to learn. It helps me in that sense because they know the basics and they have covered that in their tutoring stuff. So in that way, I guess it affects me positively. Otherwise, it doesn't affect me so much. As an English teacher, when I'm tutoring, then sometimes I have demands from parents, some crazy demands, and the parents expect too many things from their kids without really understanding their abilities.
So you did tutoring before?
Yes, I have. For a long time, actually. When I was a student, I used to tutor, and a lot of the time, well, I forgot how it went, but it was a lot of helping students with their homework, getting them to speak more, improve their spoken English, and that is really fun because they actually get to use it, and it's a fun lesson when a student actually uses what they learn. But then having to do it every day, I think that can drive a student to get bored with that subject.
What do you think about the two identities, as a tutor and as a teacher? Which one do you prefer, and how do you compare these two?
I think I prefer the identity of a teacher, I guess, because there you have goals that you have to achieve as a teacher, so you get that satisfaction of achieving a goal and objective. As a tutor, it's very muddy. If you're a good tutor, you will get to achieve a lot with the student, but if you're just sort of there, sort of killing time, there's no way to know. There are no objectives you have to meet. It's just someone telling you, oh, make my kid do better. But what is better? There's no clear goal. So it can be a bit dissatisfying in that sense. But sometimes when you see a great improvement, it can also be really good. So because tutoring is so unstructured, it can be a bit draining as a teacher, and it can be counter-effective as a student.
So what are your goals as a teacher?
As a teacher, when we have a curriculum, we have certain topics that we have to make sure kids understand. As a tutor, you rely heavily on their homework or what what someone else is teaching them, and you sort of have to consolidate that. So you're not really setting these goals. So that is a bit frustrating.
So is your content, activities, teaching pace, teaching schedule affected by tutoring?
No, actually, I would say it's the other way around. I think tutors are affected by the school's curriculum and teaching pace and style, because a lot of the days students spend at schools, so then they're affected by that, and a lot of the things they learn at school, so tutors have to cater to that and either teach them new stuff or consolidate that. They have to pay attention to that.
So is your professionalism, commitment, involvement, and teacher identity influenced by tutoring?
No, I would say no, not.
Okay, how do you pursue your goals as a teacher under the influence of tutoring?
How do I pursue my goals under the influence of tutoring? Well, because if I had direct contact with the tutors of my students, it would be a bit better, because I could tell them what they need to concentrate on and stuff like that. But because I do not have access to that, so I have to guess and continue to assume that, okay, my kid was like this last lesson, and perhaps they're like that this lesson too, so I have to go on consistently with my goals without taking into account that they might have outside help, because I do not see major effects, at least in my students, that there's outside help. But perhaps if a student has really good abilities, it's a lot more evident.
Do you view tutoring as a competitor?
Of teaching? Not really, because it is still teaching in a sense, but I do not see it as a competitor, because this is a bit more systemized, and that is in a way a different industry, a different way of doing things. So I would say there are different needs. The students who go to tutoring, they have different needs. Students who go to schools, they have different needs and objectives to fulfill. They have to go to their exams, but tutoring is sort of there to facilitate that.
So how do you describe the status of tutoring? If like for teaching and tutoring you give two words.
I don't know about the status of tutoring, because it is so fuzzy. It is not clearly defined. But if I had to describe them in two words, teaching, I would say, is sort of like a window to different worlds and different information, and so students are exposed to many things. Tutoring is like a very defined path. Students have to go on this thing in order to achieve good exam results or get better at a certain topic. So tutoring is a bit rigid in that sense, but you also have this freedom to create new paths for the kids. If they are interested in something, you're not tied down by a system or curriculum. So that's one advantage tutoring has. I don't know how many tutors take advantage of that though.
You said you did tutoring, so you did it one-on-one or tutoring centers?
I did it one-on-one, and I've done tutoring centers, and I absolutely think tutoring centers are really ripping parents off. I would say one-on-one is a lot more effective, I think, because you're actually paying attention to that kid, their needs. But at a tutorial center, it's just really about filling that hour. So I would say a lot of the tutorial centers, maybe not the best, some are really good, of course, who actually care about the different needs of a student and put them into classes accordingly. But the majority will put all levels of students in one class. That makes for a very ineffective class.
Do you have anything else to say about tutoring?
I think tutoring in itself is not a bad thing. If a kid needs it, that can be a really great extra help. But I feel like in Asia, it is like a trend to send your kid to tutorial centers. And it's really sad because you're taking a child's childhood away. They'll never get it back. These things that they're drilling into their heads, they don't even remember half of it after a year or after a few months. It's so silly to do this. Instead of encouraging kids to have a passion for learning, we're just drilling them, and tutorial center is something that is helping with that. So I would not support it 100%, but for kids who really need it, if they are paired with good tutors, that is the dream, right? Otherwise, I would say this is not the best thing for a child.
By the way, where are you from?
I'm from Pakistan and I grew up in Hong Kong.
And okay, so you've been here
All my life, yeah.
Okay.
And I have had the unique experience of going to a local school and then an international school, and I see the difference so much because local schools are really all about following rules and all about following structure and all about exams, whereas the international schools went out of their way to make sure we were independent. We got to use what we learned, and we got to, every time there was a problem, we weren't made to go, oh, why did you do that? But we were made to understand what are the consequences of different actions. So it makes you independent, and I think that's what the point of education is, to get a kid to think on their own.
But local school is for primary school.
And second, actually primary local schools are really fun. I like the structure and the way it's done, but then something changes in secondary schools. It just becomes so crazy exam driven. It's so sad.
So you went to local primary and secondary school, and
Yeah.
then you went to international school.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And there's such a big difference in the secondary schools, at least. But for primary school, there's not that pressure of too many public exams. So
Still, so many students go to tutoring centers.
because I think parents think that this will help, but why do you think that? Do you think something's wrong with the curriculum that we are teaching? Do you think it has become too outdated? Because now kids have so much technology. We should keep that in mind, and cater to that too. I think we just need to change our curriculum a little bit. Otherwise, primary schools do have a lot of fun stuff for kids to do. We just need to make it a bit more experiential. In my opinion, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. This was good.
Thank you very much.